You know, I've spent the last 5 years telling people the exact same thing. If your living room has massive windows, if the sun blasts right onto the wall, you just have to swallow your pride, give up on those perfect OLED blacks, and buy a premium Samsung QLED. It was just the reality of the math. OLEDs degrade and burn in if you push them too hard, and they turn into giant, expensive black mirrors in the daylight. But I was wrong. Or, well, I'm wrong now. Hi, this is Chris Walker, and looking at what just dropped out of CES and the finalized spec sheets this month, the entire premium TV market just got flipped upside down. LG quietly took their iPad-grade tandem OLED tech, where they literally stack the emissive layers to share the electrical load, and shoved it into the 2026 G6 and the massive C6H models. It basically solves burn-in completely. But, and this is a massive but, they are setting a brutal trap for 90% of buyers with the standard C6. Before we tear down exactly which models are safe and which ones are just recycled trash in a new box, hit that subscribe button. We don't take brand sponsorships here, so hitting like and subbing is the only way we can afford to buy these units and keep these teardowns brutally honest. Let me show you why the QLED era might actually be over. Start with the historical context. Why is this a big deal? For years, TV reviewers, myself included, have basically handed you a flowchart. Got a dark basement? Buy an LG C-Series or a Sony OLED. Got a living room with massive sliding glass doors and sunlight bouncing off hardwood floors? Don't even look at OLED. Buy a Samsung Neo QLED or a Sony Mini LED because, well, it was physics. You can't fight physics. If you took a traditional OLED and told it to fight the midday sun, you had to crank the organic pixels to maximum voltage. And voltage means heat. Heat is the ultimate enemy of organic material. That's how you get burn-in. It's why leaving CNN or a gaming HUD on the screen for 6 hours a day was basically a death sentence for your panel. We all knew it. The manufacturers knew it, so they artificially limited the full screen brightness with aggressive auto-dimming to protect the TV from literally cooking itself. But here's the thing. That flowchart is officially garbage now.
Let me actually explain what LG just did, because the marketing departments are doing a terrible job of it. They keep shouting about 3500 nits peak brightness, and look, ignore that. It's noise. Peak brightness is measured on a tiny 10% or even 3% window on the screen for like 3 seconds before the automatic brightness limiter slams it back down. You don't watch a 3% window, you watch a full screen. You watch a hockey game that is 80% bright white ice. The real story, the thing that actually changes your viewing experience and protects your investment, is tandem OLED. I didn't think this would matter as much for large-scale TVs as it did for iPads, but it absolutely does. Here's what I mean. Instead of one layer of organic material screaming at 100% capacity to fight the ambient light in your room, LG stacked 2 emissive layers on top of each other. They're wired in tandem, so to get that massive room-filling brightness, each layer only has to work at like 50% capacity. Half the stress, half the heat, and I actually tested this. I had the new 77-inch LG G6 running a brutal 4K HDR loop of Mad Max Fury Road for 4 hours straight in the studio. On a 2023 or 2024 OLED, if you walk up and put your hand on the back panel right behind where the processor and power supply live, it's hot, like uncomfortably warm to the touch. I put my hand on the back of the G6 after 4 hours, right on the metallic chassis. It was barely lukewarm. The thermal efficiency is just stupidly good. Because they aren't roasting the pixels, LG finally unlocked the sustained full screen brightness. It is blinding. But more importantly, it means the longevity of this panel just doubled. Burn-in? Unless you're literally running a static flight simulator menu 24 hours a day for a straight year, it's essentially a solved problem for normal, heavy use. But that's only half the reason this TV is a QLED killer. The other half? I almost ignored this when I read the spec sheet, and that would have been a massive mistake.
The coating. LG slapped this new 0.3% anti-reflective layer on the G6. Now, Samsung did something similar recently with their S95 series, and it was Controversial. Samsung's matte coating diffused light, sure, but it made the blacks look a little washed out, a little gray when the room lights were turned on. It severely annoyed purists. LG didn't do matte. This is still a glossy screen, but whatever voodoo they did with the polarizer layer completely neutralizes ambient light. I sat in my living room at 2 p.m., sun blasting right at the TV. I turned on Dune Part 2. Normally, in the dark Arrakis scenes, I'm just staring at my own reflection eating popcorn on the couch. Not here. The reflection is just gone. Eaten. It maintains perfect inky OLED blacks, but with the daytime punch of a high-end mini LED. It feels like cheating. It really does. But, and you knew there was a but coming. Living with the G6 is not a perfect experience. Before you drop $4,000 on this thing, we need to talk about the physical reality of putting it in your house, because this is a gallery design. It is meant to be mounted flush against the wall, and I mean flush. It comes with a proprietary zero-gap wall mount in the box. Sounds incredibly premium, right? Actually, it's a nightmare if you aren't prepared for it. Look at this. The recessed channel on the back of the TV, where you have to route your HDMI cables and power cord, is insanely tight. If you use those thick braided heavy-duty AudioQuest or Monoprice HDMI 2.1 cables, good luck. They barely bend enough to fit into the track. And if they poke out even a millimeter, the TV won't sit flush against the wall. The magnets won't catch. You will spend an hour just cursing at cables trying to tape them down flat with gaffer tape just to get the TV to click into place. And God forbid you don't want to wall mount it. If you want to put this on an entertainment center, you have to buy LG's official pedestal stand separately. It's expensive, it leans the TV back at a slight angle, which I personally hate, and honestly, it feels a little wobbly for a TV that weighs this much. Oh yeah, the tandem panel and the built-in heatsink, this thing is incredibly heavy. Do not try to mount the 77-inch model by yourself unless you want a very expensive trip to the chiropractor and a shattered panel.
Then there's the software. Look, WebOS has been getting steadily cluttered for years, but WebOS 26, it's bordering on intrusive. They've baked all this AI generation nonsense into the interface. There's literally a Copilot-style assistant that pops up and tries to recommend shows based on your mood. You turn the TV on, and before you can just click on the Netflix app to resume a show, this little digital avatar is asking if you want to generate an AI screensaver. No, I just want to watch Fallout. You can turn most of it off deep in the settings menus, and I highly recommend you spend the first hour of ownership doing exactly that. But it's incredibly frustrating that I have to spend 20 minutes disabling bloatware on a flagship premium display. The Alpha 11 Gen 3 processor is lightning fast, so the menus don't lag or stutter like they did on the old C2 or C3. But the layout is just a mess of advertisements and features nobody asked for. But, and I have to be fair here, once you actually get your movie playing, once that image hits the screen and the room lights are up, you instantly forgive the terrible menus and the frustrating cable routing. The picture quality is just that undeniably flawless. The QLED argument is dead. If you have the budget, the G6 is the absolute king of the living room. Period. By the way, before I move on to the massive trap LG set with the standard C6, drop a comment down below right now. What specific piece of gear do you want me to tear down next? Are we doing the new 2026 flagship soundbars with the wireless Atmos dropouts? Or do you want me to forensically test those new budget mini LEDs that TCL is claiming can beat OLED? Let me know. I read all of them, and the most upvoted comment gets the next video. Okay, so the G6 is amazing, but it's also incredibly expensive, effectively pricing out normal people, which brings us to the bread and butter of the TV world, the model everyone actually buys, the LG C-Series.
If you go to Reddit or AVS Forum or any tech site right now, people are screaming
about how great LG's new Tandem OLED is. So, naturally, thousands of people are going to walk into a store or go online, see the LG C6 for over $1,000 less than the G6, and assume they're getting that same revolutionary tech just without the fancy flush wall mount. Stop. Do not do that. This is the dirtiest trick I've seen a manufacturer pull in a long time. They split the C-Series mind. If you buy the standard 55 and 65-inch LG C6, you are not getting the tandem panel. You are getting the exact same single-layer WOLED panel architecture from last year. Yes, it has the new Alpha 11 processor. Yes, it technically supports 165 Hz for PC gamers, but it is fundamentally old tech. It still has the same burn-in risks, it still has the same brightness limitations, and it still struggles in a sunlit room compared to a QLED. If you want the tandem tech in a C-Series, you have to buy the C6H. The H stands for, well, who knows what it stands for? Probably high margin, because it's only available in massive sizes, 77 inches and 83 inches. So let's break down exactly what happens if you buy the standard 55 and 65-inch C6, because this is where the marketing illusion really starts to fall apart, and where I see thousands of people about to flush $800 down the drain. You walk into a big box store, or you're scrolling Amazon, and you see the C6. The banner ad says 2026 Alpha 11 AI processor, 165 Hz PC gaming, next general OLED. And you think, okay, perfect. This is the sweet spot. It always has been. The C-Series is the default recommendation. But then you get it home. You take it out of the box, and I did this exactly 3 days ago in the studio. You pull the styrofoam off, you lift the panel, and it feels identical to last year's C5. I mean, exactly the same chassis flex, the same composite back panel. You bolt on that same slightly wobbly central stand.
You boot it up, navigate past the incredibly annoying WebOS 26 Copilot pop-up that begs you to make an LG account, and you fire up a heavy HDR game, let's say Cyberpunk or Alan Wake 2. You're playing in a bright room, the sun is coming in, and after about 5 minutes, you notice it. The screen just subtly dims. Not a lot, just enough to take the punch out of the neon signs. That is the ABL, the auto brightness limiter, kicking in to save the panel from itself. Because, as I mentioned, the standard C6 does not have the new tandem panel. It's using the single-layer OLED stack. It's physically incapable of sustaining the brightness you think you paid for without risking permanent burn-in. I put a thermal camera on the standard C6 after an hour of HDR gaming. The cluster right behind the power supply was hitting 104 degrees Fahrenheit. That is organic material literally baking itself. The TV has to dim the screen. It has no choice. Wait, let me explain that better. It's not that the standard C6 is a bad TV. It's a fantastic display, but it's a 2025 display being sold at a 2026 premium. Actually, let's look at the math, because this is the part that genuinely frustrates me. Right now, you can buy last year's 65-inch LG C5 on clearance. Best Buy, Amazon, everywhere. They are clearing out warehouses. It's sitting at roughly $1,200 to $1,300. The new 65-inch C6 is launching around $2,099. What are you getting for that extra $800? You aren't getting a brighter screen. I measured them side by side with a colorimeter. The sustained nits are within a 3% margin of error. You aren't getting better longevity. You're getting the Alpha 11 Gen 3 processor instead of the Alpha 9. And look, if you exclusively watch garbage, low bitrate 720p cable TV broadcasts of college basketball, yes, the Alpha 11 cleans up the macro blocking around the player slightly better. It does. But for 4K, Netflix, Apple TV+, PS5 gaming, I challenge anyone to spot the difference in a blind test.
Oh, and the 165 Hz refresh rate on the C6?
I noticed something really strange here. If you hook up a high-end gaming PC with an RTX 5080 and push the C6 to 165 Hz with G-Sync enabled, the VRR gamma shift, that weird flickering and dark gray menus that OLEDs have struggled with for years, it's actually worse on the C6 at 165 Hz than it is on the C5 at 120 Hz. I don't know if it's a firmware issue in the new Alpha 11 chip or what, but right now, out of the box on firmware 3.11.02, pushing that panel to its absolute limit makes the near blacks look unstable. So you're paying an $800 premium for a TV that performs identically in 95% of use cases and arguably worse in extreme PC gaming scenarios until they patch it. It's a massive trap. Do not buy the standard C6. Just buy the C5 while you still can. But what if you do want the new tech? What if you're the person who leaves ESPN or Bloomberg on for 6 hours a day and you're terrified of burn-in, but you refuse to buy the flagship G6 because you don't want to mount it flush to the wall? That is where the C6H comes in. And this is where the conversation actually gets interesting. The H series only comes in 77-inch and 83-inch models. And the moment you take it out of the box, you realize it is a completely different beast than the standard C6. It is heavy. I almost threw my back out lifting the 77-inch onto the media console. Why is it so heavy? Because it has the tandem OLED panel and it has a massive passive metallic heatsink across the entire back to pull heat away from those stacked dual emissive layers. I ran the exact same thermal test on the C6H that I ran on the standard C6. Same Cyberpunk HDR loop, same room temp. After an hour, the back of the C6H was at 86 degrees. It was barely above room temperature. The thermal management is completely ruthless. Because of that, the ABL, that annoying auto-dimming feature, almost never triggers. You can be in a blindingly bright snow scene in Horizon Forbidden West, and the screen just holds that luminance indefinitely. It doesn't flinch.
But here's the reality check on the C6H. You are paying a massive early adopter tax for this longevity. At $3,500 for the 77-inch, you are fundamentally betting against the lifespan of a cheaper TV. If you upgrade your TV every 3 or 4 years, buying the C6H is a waste of money. You will never hit the degradation point where the tandem panel proves its worth. But if you are the type of buyer who holds onto a TV for 7, 8, or 9 years, the math suddenly flips. A standard WOLED-driven hard in a bright room will show noticeable uniformity issues by year 4. The tandem panel on the C6H is engineered to effectively double that timeline. It's an investment in peace of mind. I want to pause here and ask you guys to weigh in because this is a highly polarizing trade-off. Would you rather pay $2,000 today for a clearance 77-inch C5, knowing it might have burn-in in 5 years, or pay $3,500 today for the C6H, knowing it will likely look flawless a decade from now? Drop a comment. I genuinely want to see where the community lands on the value of panel longevity versus upfront cost. Now, we cannot have a conversation about premium living room TVs without talking about the elephant in the room, the Samsung S95F, QD-OLED. Because for the last 3 years, QD-OLED has been the undisputed king of color. By using quantum dots instead of LG's white subpixel, Samsung's panels can push bright reds and bright greens at luminances that make standard OLEDs look washed out. If you were watching Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in a pitch-black room, the Samsung S95F looks better than the LG C6H. It just does. The color volume is staggering. But, and this is the deal breaker that Samsung refuses to fix, you do not live in a pitch-black room all the time. I actually didn't expect this to still be an issue in 2026, but it is. QD-OLED panels do not have a traditional polarizer layer. That means when ambient light, sunlight, lamps, whatever, hits the screen, it physically excites the quantum dots in the panel. The TV cannot display a true inky black if there is light shining on it.
the blacks lift. They turn this weird dark gray magenta color.
So you have this incredibly expensive TV, and during the daytime, the contrast ratio actually takes a massive hit. Meanwhile, the LG G6, with its new 0.3% anti-reflective coating, is sitting right next to it, absorbing the room light like a black hole and maintaining perfect contrast. Plus, Samsung does not have tandem tech. They are pushing a single layer of blue OLED material incredibly hard to excite those quantum dots. They are relying entirely on software algorithms to prevent burn-in. And if you look at the long-term stress tests on RTings from the last 2 generations of QD-OLED, they burn in faster than LG's WOLEDs do. So if you put the S95F in a sun-drenched living room, you are getting raised blacks during the day and a higher risk of panel degradation over the next 5 years compared to LG's new tandem lineup. It is a strictly home theater dark room TV being aggressively marketed as a living room TV. And that right there is why the market has completely shifted this month. The trade-offs have changed. If you think the standard C6 is a trap, the entry-level B6 is honestly just an insult to anyone trying to build a basic living room setup. LG knows that a lot of people just want the OLED badge without taking out a second mortgage. So they aggressively priced the new B6, what they're calling the OLED SE panel, at around $1,500 for a 65-inch. It sounds like a steal. You get the perfect blacks, the infinite contrast, all the marketing buzzwords, but to hit that price point, they literally ripped the polarizer out of the panel. I set the B6 up in the studio and turned on all the overhead daylight bulbs. I tried watching an episode of Severance, which has a lot of bright, sterile office scenes mixed with deep shadows. In the shadow details, I could literally count the buttons on my own shirt reflecting back at me. It is a mirror. If you have a single window behind your couch, you're going to be staring at your own silhouette all day.
Actually, let me be fair to LG for a second. If you live in a basement apartment or you're putting this in a dedicated pitch black home theater room where you control every single light source, the B6 is fine. It really is. It delivers 90% of the picture quality of a premium OLED. But if you are putting this in a normal American family room where the kids leave the blinds open, you are going to hate this TV. You'll end up cranking the brightness to max just to punch through the glare. And because it's a standard single-layer WOLED, you're just accelerating the burn-in clock. So let's just cut through the noise entirely. Let's group these out based on the physical reality of how you actually live. Because right now, the product stacks are actively designed to confuse you into spending an extra $1,000 on the wrong piece of glass. If your primary focus is budget, and you just want a killer 55 or 65-inch TV for movies and gaming without getting ripped off, you completely ignore the 2026 lineup. Do not look at the B6. Do not look at the standard C6. You go out right now and you hunt down a clearance 2025 LG C5. It gives you the proper screen coating, it gives you the premium chassis, and it performs virtually identical to the C6 for hundreds of dollars less. It is the absolute best value in the market, hands down, and it's not even close. The inventory on these is drying up fast, so if you're in the market, this is the one you grab before they're gone. If you are a high anxiety buyer, the person who falls asleep with the TV on, or plays one specific HUD-heavy game for 4 hours every night, or just wants to buy one TV and not think about it for the next 8 years, your path is the C6H. You have to swallow the pill on the 77-inch minimum size, and yes, it's expensive, but the heavy metallic thermal management and that Tandem 2.0 stacked panel means you are basically buying commercial-grade durability disguised as a consumer TV. It's an investment in never having to run a pixel refresher manually or panic when someone leaves a news ticker on pause.
But if you want the absolute pinnacle, if you have the massive windows, the sun-drenched living room, and you historically had to buy a flagship Samsung QLED just to see the football game on a Sunday afternoon, the LG G6 is the best overall TV in the world right now, bar none. The combination of that 0.3% anti-reflective coating swallowing the room light, paired with the sustained full-screen luminance of the tandem panel, it completely invalidates the QLED argument. It's the first time I've ever looked at an OLED in a bright room and didn't feel like I was compromising. Yes, the wall mounting process is a nightmare. Yes, routing those thick HDMI cables through the microchannels on the back will make you want to throw a controller through the drywall. But once it's up, it's flawless. I want to leave you with this, because the tech industry makes its money by keeping you terrified of falling behind. Every single year, reviewers get flown out to CES, and we get handed these slick, laminated spec sheets that scream about 10% window peak nits or AI processing or whatever metric they invented that week, and we obsess over it. But you don't watch a spec sheet. You watch a TV in a room with the specific thermal environment, specific lighting, and specific seating distances. The biggest truth bomb I can drop after 5 years of testing these things is that the best TV isn't the one with the highest peak brightness number. The best TV is the one where the panel chemistry actually matches the physics of your living room. A 4000 nit QD-OLED is garbage if the screen turns gray the second you turn a lamp on. A budget OLED is a waste of money if you have to treat it like a fragile museum piece to prevent burn-in. LG finally cracked the code with Tandem OLED. They fixed the durability, they fixed the brightness, but they also laid out a massive minefield of confusing naming conventions with the standard C series to trick you into buying old tech at a premium. Don't fall for it.
I've put links down in the description, not just generic links to the manufacturer's sites. These point to the exact model numbers of the safe versions we talked about. The clear C5s that haven't been price hiked, the exact C6H models that actually have the tandem panels, and the G6. Using those vetted sources is the easiest way to make sure you don't accidentally check out with the wrong revision and get stuck with the showroom trap. Check the dimensions of your room, figure out your lighting, and buy the panel that solves your actual problem. I'm Chris Walker. I'll catch you in the next teardown.